The dinner table was quiet when my father said it. Not angry, not apologetic, just matter of fact. Your brother has always been the priority. You've always been secondary, Murphy. My mother nodded like he just commented on the weather. My brother Aaron didn't even look up from his plate. Something broke in that moment. Not my spirit, my illusions. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, drop a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, this story gets wild. Tell me where you're watching from. You're not alone in this. My name is Murphy, and I grew up in Phoenix in what looked like a normal suburban home. 2 parents, 2 kids, a dog, a backyard. From the outside, we were fine. Picture perfect, even. The kind of family you'd see in a catalog, smiling on the front porch with matching sweaters during the holidays. But inside, there was a hierarchy. Unspoken, but absolute. It lived in the walls, in the air we breathed, in every decision that was made without discussion. There were no family meetings where they announced the rules. No explicit declarations. No moment where my parents sat us down and said, "Here's how this works." Just patterns. Consistent, undeniable patterns that repeated so often they became the fabric of our daily life. Attention flowed toward Aaron. Resources followed. Celebrations, too. It was like watching water run downhill, natural, inevitable, unquestioned. I was described as independent. Low maintenance. The easy one. And I believed that was a compliment. For years, I wore it like a badge of honor. I thought it meant I was mature, capable, self-sufficient. I thought it made my parents proud. But here's what those words actually meant: don't need. Don't ask. Don't compete. They were code for, we don't have to worry about you, so we won't. Love existed in our house, but it came with terms I never agreed to. Terms I didn't even know I was signing up for. Let me give you examples, because this wasn't about feelings or impressions. This was measurable. Concrete. The kind of thing you could write down on paper and see the imbalance staring back at you. Birthdays. Aaron got themed parties with rented venues and guest lists that required spreadsheets. There were decorations, entertainment, goodie bags for all his friends. I got dinner at home and a cake from the grocery store, the kind they write your name on while you wait. When I mentioned it once, casually, not even complaining really, just observing, my mom said, "You've never been into big celebrations." I was 12. I'd never been asked. School. Aaron struggled with math, so they hired a private tutor. 3 times a week, $80 an hour, for 2 full years. He got homework help, test prep, someone to sit with him and make sure he understood every concept. I struggled with chemistry. My dad handed me a textbook and said, "You'll figure it out," like it was a life lesson I should be grateful for. And I did figure it out. Alone. Late nights at the library, YouTube videos, begging classmates to explain things during lunch. I passed. But I was exhausted. Milestones. When Aaron graduated high school, the whole family took off work. My parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, everyone drove hours to be there. They celebrated for days. There was a party, gifts, speeches about his potential. When I graduated college, something Aaron never finished, something I'd worked myself to the bone to achieve, my parents sent a card. A card. They had plans that weekend. A fishing trip they'd booked months before. They didn't reschedule. College itself. Aaron's education was funded. Not fully, but significantly. They paid for his dorm, his meal plan, his textbooks, his parking pass. I worked 3 jobs. I waited tables, worked campus security overnight, and did data entry on weekends. I took out loans that took me a decade to clear. When I mentioned the imbalance once, not accusingly, just stating a fact, my father said you've always been better with money, like my ability to survive scarcity was proof I didn't need help. Career. When Aaron changed jobs, and he changed them often, it was a family discussion. Strategy sessions at dinner. Should he take the offer? What about the benefits? Is the commute manageable? Everyone weighed in like it was a national crisis. When I got promoted to senior analyst, a position I'd worked toward for 3 years, my mother said, "Oh, that's nice, honey," and immediately changed the subject to Aaron's dating life. She wanted to know if he'd called this girl back. So by the time that dinner happened, the one where they said it out loud, I already knew. I'd known my whole life. It was woven into everything. The shock wasn't the ranking. It was how casually they stated it. Like it was obvious. Like I'd always known and accepted it. Like there was nothing wrong with saying it at a family dinner over pasta and salad. And the worst part? I had known. I had accepted it. I'd been complicit through silence. Through not asking for what Aaron got automatically. Through believing that being low maintenance was virtue, not erasure. Through convincing myself that needing less made me stronger, when really it just made me invisible. After that dinner, life continued as normal. For them. No apologies. No follow-up conversation. No, "Hey, that came out wrong, we didn't mean it like that." No acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, saying your child was always secondary might warrant some discussion. Just business as usual. The next day, my mom texted about a recipe she'd tried. My dad sent me an article about football. Aaron didn't reach out at all. But something had shifted in me. It was subtle at first. Like a frequency change I couldn't quite name. The world looked the same, but I was seeing it differently. 2 weeks later, my mother texted. "Aaron's moving to a bigger place. Can you help with the deposit? He's a little short this month." A little short. Aaron was 34 years old. He had a job, a wife, 2 kids. And he was a little short. Again. The next week, she mentioned, casually, over the phone while I was making dinner, that Aaron had some credit card debt. Nothing major, she said, like there was a version of debt that was major and this wasn't it. Just got away from him a bit. Like debt was a dog that slipped its leash. Then Aaron himself forwarded me bills. No message attached. No explanation. No request, even. Just forwarded them like I was accounts payable. The assumption was built into the silence. I'd handle it. I always did. And here's the thing, the old me would have. Without question. Without hesitation. The old pattern was automatic. Phone buzzes, request arrives, I say yes. Immediately. Of course. I'll take care of it. Don't worry. I'd already be pulling up my banking app before I'd finished reading the message. But this time, I let the phone sit. I finished my work. I made dinner. I ate it slowly. I watched a show. I lived my day. I went to bed. And nothing catastrophic happened. No emergency. No disaster. No frantic calls. Just silence. That unsettled me more than I expected. I'd built my entire identity around being the reliable one. The one who showed up. The one who fixed things. And here I was, not fixing something, and the world kept turning. I started examining my own life with clear eyes. Really looking at it, maybe for the first time. How much of my time went to family drama? Hours every week on phone calls, listening to problems I couldn't solve, problems that weren't mine to solve. How much of my money had quietly disappeared into Aaron's problems over the years? I didn't want to calculate it. I knew it would make me sick. How much energy had I spent managing their stress, their expectations, their comfort? Energy I could have spent on myself. On my own dreams. On building something that was mine. I opened a separate bank account. One they didn't know about. One that didn't have my mother as a backup contact or my father's name on any paperwork. I canceled shared access to anything financial. I stopped automatic payments I didn't even remember setting up, subscriptions and services that benefited everyone but me. And when the next request came, "Can you cover Aaron's car insurance this month? He's between paychecks," I said something I'd never said before. "I can't." 2 words. No explanation. No apology. No detailed excuse about my own expenses or false promises to help next time. Just no. My mother called within an hour. "Is something wrong? You seem distant." I wasn't distant. I was present. In my own life. For the first time in 32 years. She pivoted quickly, the way she always did when I didn't immediately agree. "Aaron's really stressed, Murphy. He's got a lot on his plate right now." Like I didn't. Like my plate was empty and waiting to be filled with other people's problems. And I realized something profound, something that should have been obvious but wasn't. Knowing someone is struggling doesn't make their struggle my responsibility. Their stress is not my emergency. Their poor planning is not my crisis to manage. I'd been called capable my whole life. Responsible. Dependable. The one who has it together. And capability had become an excuse for exploitation. Because I could handle it, I should. Because I was strong enough to carry their weight, it was selfish not to. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was at work, in the middle of a meeting, and I saw my father's name flash across my screen. I let it go to voicemail. That itself was growth. I listened to the message during my lunch break. His voice had that urgent but vague tone that always meant money. "We need you home this weekend, Murphy. It's important. Family meeting. No details. Just the summons." I drove to Phoenix that Saturday. 3 hours in the car, 3 hours to think about what I was walking into. I knew it was bad. They didn't do family meetings unless someone needed something. Usually me. Usually my wallet. The house felt different the moment I walked in. Heavier. There was a desperate energy hanging in the air, thick and uncomfortable. You could feel it. The dining table was covered in paperwork. Financial statements, notices in red ink, loan documents, past due warnings. Stacks of paper that told a story I already knew the ending to. Aaron sat in the corner, sullen and avoiding eye contact. My parents wouldn't look at me directly. Aaron's wife Bonnie was there too, looking anxious, hands twisted in her lap. My father cleared his throat. The sound of a man about to deliver bad news and hoping you'll fix it. Aaron's business venture didn't work out. Didn't work out. That's one way to put it. Like he'd tried a new recipe and it didn't taste good. Like it was a minor disappointment. The reality, which came out slowly, painfully, like pulling teeth, Aaron had invested in some partnership scheme. Something he didn't understand but sounded impressive. He'd signed loans with confidence he didn't earn. Made promises he couldn't keep. Guaranteed returns he had no way to guarantee. And now it had collapsed. Spectacularly. "It's temporary," my mother said. She said that word a lot. Temporary. Like a prayer. Like saying it enough times would make it true. "This is just a temporary setback. We just need temporary help. Just to get through this temporary situation." They all looked at me. That look I'd seen 1,000 times. The look that said, "You're the solution." My father spoke carefully, like he was presenting a logical argument instead of a demand. "You're established, Murphy. You don't have dependents. You've got savings. You can absorb this better than anyone. You're in the best position to help. Absorb." Like I was a sponge. Like their bad decisions were water and I was just there to soak it up. Aaron's expression shifted as my father spoke. From fear to relief. The tightness in his shoulders eased. The solution had arrived. I had arrived. Everything would be fine now. Bonnie looked quietly grateful, like she'd been holding her breath and could finally exhale. My mother reached for my hand across the table. And I asked a question that had apparently never occurred to anyone. "What's the plan if I don't?" Silence. Genuine, stunned silence. Like I'd spoken a foreign language. My father blinked at me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what happens if I don't help? What's the backup plan? What are you going to do?" My mother's face crumpled. "Murphy, this is family. We're family." Like that explained everything. Like that obligation erased all nuance, all boundaries, all self-preservation. "I know we're family," I said. "That's why I'm asking what the plan is. Because there should be one that doesn't hinge entirely on me. There should be options." Plural. Aaron looked panicked now. Bonnie looked confused. My parents looked hurt, betrayed even. "I need time," I said. "To understand everything. To see the full picture." They assumed that meant time to calculate how much I'd give. Time to rearrange my finances. Time to figure out how to make their problem fit into my life. It actually meant time to decide whether to give anything at all. I drove back to my city that night. I didn't stay for dinner. I didn't reassure them. I just left. I made 2 appointments. One with my therapist, someone I'd been seeing on and off for years. One with my financial advisor, someone who'd helped me build the stability I had. And over the next few days, I made a decision: if I helped, it would be on my terms. Not as their safety net. Not as infrastructure. Not as the invisible support beam holding up everyone else's lives. As a person making a choice. A conscious, boundaried, self-respecting choice. A week later, I returned to Phoenix. I brought a folder. Not answers, not a check, not the rescue they were expecting. A folder. The house had that same desperate energy, maybe worse now. They'd been waiting. Hoping. Assuming. The papers were more organized now, like they'd been trying to make sense of the chaos, but the chaos was still visible underneath. I skipped the pleasantries. "No, how are you? No, how's everyone holding up?" I sat down at that same table and said, "Walk me through it." My parents rehashed the story with more details this time. Bad timing. Market downturn. Unexpected expenses. A client who didn't pay. Costs they hadn't anticipated. It was everyone's fault but Aaron's, the way they told it. Just bad luck. Aaron added his own details. Stress. The kids need stability. Things beyond his control. He'd really believed in this venture. He'd done his research. It just didn't work out. My mother, voice soft, almost pleading, we just need help getting through this part. Just this one time. Just enough to get back on our feet. Just. That word was doing so much work. I asked the questions no one wanted to hear. The questions that made the room go cold. How much? A number. Large. Said carefully, quietly, like saying it softly made it smaller. Like whispering a number would hurt less. What's the plan after I help? Silence. What changes are you making so this doesn't happen again? More silence. Uncomfortable shifting. My mother's tone changed. This isn't the time for an interrogation, Murphy. Your brother is in crisis. We're in crisis. We need help, not a lecture. Then it's not the time for me to write a check. Aaron leaned forward, frustration finally breaking through. We're family. This isn't about plans and conditions and interrogations. It's about helping each other. That's what family does. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Helping who? I asked. And who helps me? The question hung there. My father, trying reason, you're in a different position, Murphy. You're single, you're stable, you've got savings. You can afford this. We're not asking you to give up anything essential. I felt something click into place. Something final. I can afford it, I said slowly, because I've lived my entire life as if no one would ever catch me if I fell. Because no one ever has. I built the stability alone, from nothing, while working 3 jobs and paying off loans and being told I was good with money when really I just had no choice. I slid the folder across the table. My father opened it. His face changed. Confusion, then understanding, then something like anger. This is a loan agreement. Yes, I said. With clear terms. Aaron stared at the papers. Why are there conditions? Why does this read like a business contract? Because this isn't charity, I said. It's structured help. If I'm going to do this, we're doing it right. The conditions were listed clearly. I'd spent hours with my financial advisor putting this together. 1. Aaron sells non-essential assets first. The boat he never uses. The second car. The equipment from the failed business. You liquidate what you can before I give you $1. 2. All spending is documented and shared with me monthly. I see where every penny goes. Full transparency. 3. No new financial commitments without proof of sustainability. No new investments, no new business ventures, no major purchases until you're stable. 4. Family counseling. All of us. We're going to therapy together and we're going to talk about why this keeps happening. 5. A written agreement that my name and credit are never assumed again. If you need me, you ask. You don't forward bills. You don't volunteer my resources. You treat me like a separate person with my own life. My father stared at the paper like it was written in another language. This is cold, he said finally. Like we're strangers. Like a bank. This isn't how family treats family. I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. When you needed emotional support, I was family. When you needed money, I was infrastructure. and choosing how I show up now. Aaron's voice was tight. So you're punishing us. This is punishment for what we said at dinner. You're still angry. I'm stopping the punishment of me, I said. There's a difference. His voice rose. If you don't help, we lose everything. The house, the cars, everything. Is that what you want? If I help without boundaries, I lose everything I've built. My stability. My peace. My self-respect. Is that what you want? My mother reached for my hand, then hesitated, her fingers hovering in the air between us. We never meant to make you feel second, she said quietly. We never meant to hurt you. I pulled my hand back. Gently, but firmly. But you did. And you said it out loud. And now we're here. My father's jaw tightened. So it's sign or sink? That's your ultimatum? No, I said. It's grow or repeat. You can sign this and we work together towards something healthier. Or you can refuse and keep doing what you've always done, and I walk away knowing I offered a real solution. I stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. My mother's voice cracked. If we say no, are you walking away? From us? From your family? I looked at her. Really looked. I saw the fear there. The confusion. The hurt. But I also saw decades of dismissal. Of being second. Of being invisible. I'm not walking away from you, I said. I'm walking toward myself. There's a difference. I left the folder on the table and walked out. The next day, my father called. They wanted to sign. I drove back that afternoon. The papers were signed at that same dining table, but the energy was different now. No speeches. No elaborate apologies. No promises to do better. Just shaky signatures and exhausted faces. There was relief in the room, but it was mixed with something else. Loss, maybe. The loss of the old dynamic. The loss of the safety net they'd taken for granted. Aaron looked at me differently now. Not with the usual assumption of superiority, not with the casual dismissal I'd grown up with. With uncertainty. Maybe even a little respect, though he'd never say it. And for the first time in my life, that wasn't my problem to fix. His feelings about me weren't my responsibility. The fallout came quietly after that. Incrementally. Practical changes happened. Aaron listed his assets for sale. They started tracking expenses in a shared spreadsheet. They set up limits and boundaries around spending. It was awkward and uncomfortable and they hated it, but they did it. Family therapy started 2 weeks later. It was tense at first. Defensive. My father spoke more carefully, choosing his words like he was navigating a minefield. My mother cried often, talking about how she'd never meant to play favorites, how she'd never thought of it that way, how she'd just been trying to help where help was needed most. Aaron struggled with accountability. He wanted to explain every decision, justify every choice, make it all make sense. The therapist kept bringing him back to the present. What are you going to do differently now? What does different look like? I listened more than I spoke in those sessions. I didn't need to convince anyone of anything anymore. I didn't need them to admit I'd been wronged or apologize for decades of neglect. I just needed them to change the pattern going forward. And slowly, surprisingly, something shifted. Over the months, the panic faded. Not because I'd absorbed all the consequences, but because they learned to sit with discomfort. to make hard choices, to face their own problems instead of outsourcing them to me. Aaron stopped calling me every time something went wrong. He started figuring things out, asking Bonnie for help, talking to friends, actually dealing with his life. My parents stopped using the phrase "we'll figure it out" when what they meant was "Murphy will figure it out." They started actually figuring things out themselves. There was no dramatic healing. No movie moment where everyone hugged and cried and promised to be better. Just gradual, grinding progress. But space emerged. Space where guilt used to live. Where obligation used to press down so heavy I couldn't breathe. Back in my city, my life felt steadier. I focused on my work without distraction. I slept better, deeper, without my phone on the nightstand waiting for the next crisis. I stopped bracing for every notification, stopped assuming every call was a request. My mother's calls changed. She started asking how I was. Not what I could do. Not whether I could help with something. Just how I was. How work was going. What I'd been up to. Small talk that felt like actual connection. Aaron's texts came without requests attached. Sometimes just a photo of his kids. Sometimes a funny video. Sometimes nothing at all. Small changes. But significant ones. The biggest change was in me, though. I was no longer responsible for maintaining the illusion that everything was fine. I didn't have to pretend the imbalance was normal or acceptable. I didn't have to minimize my own needs to make room for everyone else's. I stopped proving my worth by fixing other people's problems. I stopped believing that love required self-erasure. I learned that boundaries don't erase love. They define where love can exist without destruction. Where it can be real instead of transactional. One evening, months later, I was sitting alone in my apartment. It was quiet. Peaceful. I'd made dinner for myself, something I actually wanted to eat instead of whatever was fastest. I was reading a book I'd bought weeks ago and finally had time for. And it hit me. Simple. Profound. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I wasn't waiting for them to see me, value me, pick me. I wasn't performing or proving or shrinking myself to fit into whatever space they had left over after Aaron. I had chosen myself. And that made all the difference. The relationship with my family wasn't perfect now. It probably never would be. There were still awkward moments, old patterns that tried to resurface, uncomfortable truths we were all learning to live with. But it was real. Maybe for the first time, it was real. They knew where I stood. I knew where I stood. And I wasn't standing in Aaron's shadow anymore. Being the second child, the invisible one, the afterthought, doesn't mean you need to try harder or give more or stay quieter. It's not a challenge to overcome by being more useful, more agreeable, more self-sufficient. It's a sign to step out of line entirely. To stop competing in a race you never agreed to run. To build a life where your value doesn't depend on your sacrifice. If this story felt uncomfortably familiar, if you recognized yourself in the patterns or the silence or the invisible hierarchy, you're not alone. You're really not alone. Drop a comment about your experience. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me if you've set boundaries or if you're still struggling to. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this, stories about finding yourself when your family can't see you. Because if these stories help you breathe a little easier, if they help you feel less alone, you're in exactly the right place. See you in the next one.